All right. So with aerobic training, we already gave the game away a little bit, right? One of the reasons that we try to train is to be more fit. We want to make VO2 max go up. Okay. If VO2 max goes up in general, then we assume exercise performance will go up. And that might be like, not that you're going to be an elite sort of athlete or anything else, but it might just be, I want to run 5K next week. I want to run turkey trot and not die while I'm doing it. It can be very simple like that. It could be an older adult that they can't walk up a flight of stairs. We want them to be able to walk upstairs. It could be very sort of simple, straightforward things. So we can increase performance. We can train VO2 max. We can train lactate threshold. We'll get into some of that. The other issue, if you guys remember from Principles of Health and Fitness, is of all the things that we can measure, there's an argument to be made that VO2 max as you age is the single biggest predictor of excess mortality. Low VO2 max, low aerobic fitness is associated with premature death. Okay. Now you may ask, Dr. Black, how do we know what premature death is? When should we have died? What's regular death? I don't know. People with lower VO2 maxes have more chronic diseases. They have more cardiovascular disease. They have type 2 diabetes at a higher rate. They get cancer, certain kinds at a higher rate. They die earlier from everything. Okay. So maintaining VO2 max over your lifespan is a way to live long. Okay. It is dramatically important from a health standpoint. Dramatically important. And we'll see a little bit about why that's going to be the case as we go along. Okay. So we're going to talk our way through this. So I want you guys to see the reasoning. And you guys did a very nice job kind of teasing out some of the stuff that's going to change. And a couple of the groups put fatigue on it. But if my goal is to increase performance, a thing that limits performance is fatigue, right? Either peripheral or central. Something happens and I have fatigue and I'm done. Okay. So now we got to figure out, all right, well, what are the physiological things that contribute to fatigue? And can we change things that alter that physiology? Which you guys did a very, very nice job of kind of outlining a host of things. Okay. Peripheral fatigue and central fatigue comes from hydrogen ions, right? It inhibits things peripherally. It results in pain and burning and discomfort. So that causes central fatigue. So making excess lactic acid, that's a problem. Okay. Substrate depletion. We can get central fatigue from glycogen depletion, blood glucose depletion. We can get peripheral fatigue from depleting creatine phosphate. Okay. And then substrate delivery, having glucose, having fat, these things are all gonna play some roles in there. So one of the things that we're going to see is that in addition to things changing to make your VO2 max go up, in conjunction with that, there are going to be metabolic changes that are going to result in using less glycogen, using more fat, using less blood glucose, making less lactic acid, so that we can limit some of this as well. And so we're going to make that distinction between VO2 max is sort of the size of the engine in your car. It's the max kind of horsepower that we have, but you don't know to drive the car at that all the time. You drive it in somewhere below all of that. And so that's kind of where we're going to be. Okay, so we'll talk through how that works. What may change? Well, the muscle can change. Okay, the metabolic system can change, mitochondria change, those things. There's especially changes in the cardiovascular system. Heart changes, capillary change. We see remodeling in arterioles. We see some remodeling in arteries. We see a change in blood volume. Lots of cardiovascular system changes. And then the respiratory system or the pulmonary system could change. It doesn't change very much. Okay, not very much, especially in you guys that are relatively good to go and don't have pathology there. Okay. All right. So if this is what I want to change, what do I need to do? Okay. What do I need to do? Well, you come and watch me jog slowly. and looked like a beached whale yesterday trying to run, you would have seen a little bit of this, I think. Okay, so what's the stimulus? We're back to the same principles that we had during resistance training. Overload and specificity. Okay, you get stronger by lifting more than you're accustomed to lifting, right? It makes the muscles generate more force or generate force repeatedly more than it's accustomed to. That drives adaptation. Those adaptations are specific to the muscles that you're using. With aerobic training, we need to overload the metabolic system. We need to overload the cardiovascular system. Okay? We need to overload certain things in the muscle that are a little bit different. And the specificity is going to come from you will get better in the systems that get overloaded, and you're going to get better doing whatever movement it is that you're doing. Right? If you're very unfit like me, running can make your VO2 max go up, and that can make you better as a cyclist. But if you're pretty fit as a runner, running is not going to make you a better cyclist, nor will cycling make you a better runner. Okay? Because there's some other specific things that are going to be there. So we're going to apply those two same principles. So how do we overload? It's very, very simple, right? We have to do more work than what we're accustomed to. And in this context, work is not physical work. It's not, right, force multiplied by distance work. It is intensity of exercise. So a percentage of VO2 max multiplied by the duration of time you're exercising, multiplied by the frequency of the number of days per week that you're doing things. So we're calculating work in many ways like we calculate volume when we do resistance training. So I can overload my system by going at a faster pace, at a higher intensity, or going for a longer period of time, or doing an extra day per week over what I have been doing. Okay? We will get into the next couple of slides. Which one of these matters the most? What do you guys think? Which one matters the most? The easiest and most powerful way to overload your system is to do what, Laney? Increase intensity. Right? If you're used to running at a 10-minute mile pace, run at 9.5. Okay? It's much, much easier. It's just like with resistance training. Okay? You guys will see that's one of our big deals. Duration matters up to a point. Frequency matters up to a point. Intensity is the really, really big thing. Okay? And it's increasing all of these leads to more fatigue. More fatigue, more overload, greater stimulus, theoretically then greater adaptation. Does that make sense, guys? Does that make sense? And what you should take from all of this is if you go for a walk and it's easy and you don't feel like your heart rate is up, you don't feel like you've taxed the metabolism or the pulmonary systems at all, guess what's happened? Nothing. Right? Nothing. VO2 max has not really gone up, which it's okay, right? There is value in the physical activity in and of itself, but it's not necessarily going to make VO2 go up. Okay. So I was right. Intensity is the one that matters the most for most of you guys. Okay, most college-age people, we need to be at least 50% of VO2 max during a particular exercise bout to have a chance to get our VO2 max to go up. In most of you guys, okay, that's probably going to require jogging. You can walk up a treadmill, which seems to be a very popular thing to do. I'm not going to name names on things, but people put the incline up on the treadmill and walk, lean way back, and they do all of this. Y'all seen people doing that? That would be one way to do it with walking. The incline is enough. Okay, you have to work hard enough. But for the most part, walking on level ground, it's hard to go that fast unless you're my wife, right? We call the way she walks ramming speed because it's very, very fast. So we can increase speed, greater slope, or resistance, and that's going to make everything go up. Right? That's going to make everything. Duration is interesting. There's a plateauing of the increase in VO2 max at about 40 minutes of exercise. So 15 minutes is good, a half an hour is better. 40 minutes is better still, but an hour is not really any better than 40 minutes. Okay? That's just from a VO2 max standpoint. Frequency, it plateaus at about 4 to 5 days per week, probably at about 5. Okay? A 6th day, okay? Good for you. No further increase in VO2 max. Okay? Anybody know anyone who is on the cross country, the distance team here? Anybody know any of the athletes that are on the team, Fernanda? How much do they run? An ungodly amount. 7 days per week, multiple times per day. Their race distance is a 5K or a 10K. Sometimes it's only a 3,000 meters on certain things, and yet they will run 10 miles at a time, right? All of this may be good, but they're not going to get a further increase in VO2 max from doing some of that excessive stuff. Okay? Why do they do that? Because if you're a marathon runner, the more you run, there's evidence that it's just the sheer volume of running makes you better at running. I don't know. I personally, if I was their coach, would not have them run that much. They do a lot more speed work, and they go to the weight room and do power cleans because it improves running economy. I don't know. I think some distance people train slightly too much in the wrong way, but I'm not a collegiate distance coach. Okay. If you're going to run a marathon, you could never do more than 5 days per week. You could never do more than 40 minutes at a time, and you could get your VO2 max up as much as possible. Okay, as much as possible. And you would go and try to run a marathon, and you would not be a happy camper. Okay, because you've not actually gone that full distance. There's lots of value in going for longer than 40 minutes, for going more than 5 days per week. It's just not purely and solely in VO2 max. Okay, it's just not there. Sorry.
On the duration, on the increased VO2 max happens with constant intensity. What is like the threshold there? Is it actually like it has to be constant, or is it like I've seen people on runs, they'll stop at streetlights and keep moving their legs. Is it important to do that, or is it okay to let
absolutely not important to do?
Okay.
There's a thing called interval training where you go for a little bit and then you stop and you go and you rest and you go and you rest. What matters is the time that you're expending at a particular intensity. So when you stop at the stoplight, okay, you don't need to run while you're at the stoplight. Take a moment, catch a breath, rest. That's fine. But you're not necessarily counting that as part of your total duration.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not harming you, but it's just a little bit of rest time that's going to be in there. Okay.
What happens at that 40-minute or 5 days?
No clue. It's just that is I said that I have no clue, but there's nothing magical. It's just that is enough of there is a limit to how much everything can adapt. There's a limit to how much overload we're going to get, and that seems to be okay. That's as much overload as we're able to give to the system to get. We're going to get the biggest adaptation we can get at that point. There's no that further increase beyond all of that. We're not going to get into additional adaptation. Okay. There's no more stimulus to make the left ventricle get bigger, to make blood volume expand farther, to make more red blood cells, to make more mitochondria or more capillaries or things of that nature. It's a good question. Okay. So how should we train? Well, think about what you do if you run, okay? Let's see how you do. We need to overload all of our systems. Typically, to make VO2 max go up, we use rhythmic movement with large muscle groups. Walking, running, biking, ellipticaling, rowing. God, rowing sucks. Just telling you, rowing sucks. The climbing machines, y'all done that? Been on a Stairmaster? Woo! Rough stuff. 50 to 100% of VO2 max, 20 to 45 minutes, 3 to 5 days a week. You're right there in a zone where you're going to be fine. Total work is the key. And then we introduce the concept, right, of progressive overload again. When you're doing something, when it gets easier, make it hard again. as your system adapts, and it will adapt quickly, running at the same speed no longer overloads the system in the way that it did. Running the same distance or time no longer overloads the way that it did. As you begin to adapt, you've got to overload again. And the easiest way to do that is just to go faster. Faster on the bike, faster on the elliptical, faster when you're running. Okay? So we need to increase total work as fitness improves. And it's that last piece that's the place where people get tripped up, right? Making it difficult every time you go is not fun. And that's why people don't want to. So we'll go here and we'll do Tyler.
When you say it happens quickly, how fast do those aerobic adaptations happen?
Some of them can happen in as little as one bout, which we will talk about when we get into them. But you can get a measurable increase in blood volume, in plasma volume after one bout of exercise. Okay? One bout. We are right at the edge of what we can detect. But there is some evidence that one bout makes your VO2 max go up just ever so slightly. Okay? Tyler?
Are there any neural adaptations, kind of like resistance training?
Yes.
Okay.
Just like resistance training. There are neural adaptations. So your running form improves. Your cycling form improves. Or it can improve from doing all of that. And that can make a big issue, make a big difference, especially on the very top end of things, because you're wasting less energy doing non-propulsive muscle contractions. Bernard.
The general population doesn't necessarily know their VO2 max
Mhm.
with heart rate, like in the 50 to 100%.
Great question. Should we use heart rate as our way to measure our percentage of VO2 max? Someone who's in testing a prescription, please tell me you know the answer to this. Okay, show of hands. Who's in testing a prescription? I won't tattle on y'all to Jacob or Dr. Paddock or anybody. Okay, I know some of y'all are in there. Should we use heart rate? Is it a reasonable surrogate? Yes. How do we calculate a target heart rate? I had to do this with my father-in-law. They sent him a new little exercise bike as part of his home-based cardiac rehab. And so they gave him some target heart rates. They told him how to calculate it. Of course, it was wrong. And so he called me and was like, hey, I did this and I got to this heart rate and it didn't feel like I was doing anything. And I'm like, yeah, because y'all use percentage of max heart rate instead of what? Heart rate reserve. Okay. There's a reason every one of those watches and your Oura ring and everything else uses heart rate to track where you are. That's the best surrogate that we have if you can't know VO2. But you got to calculate where your heart rate needs to be correctly. And so doing that, we got to do heart rate reserve, which we'll get into. Okay. Questions? Okay. All right. Let's talk about what adapts. Okay. From a muscle and a metabolic perspective, I'm going to squish these together. So there will be things that are changing in the muscle. Primarily, those things are going to have to do with muscle metabolism. So we're going to squish the adaptations together. If we look at the glycolytic pathways, if we look at the phosphagen pathways, no change. Run all you want, you're not getting more creatine phosphate in your muscle. Run all you want, you're not storing more ATP in your muscle. Okay. We look in glycolysis, there's very few changes, okay, that are going to occur here. The one thing that does change in the glycolytic pathway is the concentration of hexokinase goes up dramatically. You guys remember what hexokinase does? I know it was way long ago, and I didn't make you guys even know it then. Anybody remember?
It takes glucose. Okay, it uses ATP to make it phosphorylated.
That's right. Hexokinase puts a phosphate on glucose coming out of the blood and it traps it in the muscle cell. So what we get way better at doing is trapping glucose that has come in from the blood. Okay. which you could see is a useful thing, but could also have some downside later on. But that's really the only thing that changes. Okay. You all will see we tend to make less lactic acid when we're trained, but we're not really having much of an effect on the lactate dehydrogenase enzyme or the things that actually make lactate on that side of the pathway. Almost everything else that happens is on the other side. It's on the aerobic side of the pathway. So, so we will look into kind of what's going to happen here. Most of the things that change are on the aerobic or the oxidative pathway side. And the big primary thing that changes that all of you guys, for the most part, put, okay, is mitochondria. When we train aerobically, within, say, 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, you can double the amount of mitochondria in a muscle cell. Double. Okay. Think about that. If I said you could lift weights and double the size of your muscles, right, that would be astounding. And we just kind of hand wave. Oh, look, you doubled your mitochondria. It's a huge change. Okay. Additionally, the mitochondria that you have get bigger and they function better. So the primary adaptation is mitochondria content goes up, size goes up, and their functioning is going to go up. Okay?
I thought we learned in like unit 1 or 2 that mitochondria was a genetic thing, and you can increase your mitochondria factor muscles. Did I just make that up?
I don't know that you made it up, but I don't think if I characterized it that way, I apologize. So you have a genetically determined kind of baseline amount of mitochondria. And you get your mitochondria from your mom. It's partially related to fiber type. It's also partially related to just the genetics of home. Everyone can increase the amount that you have. It's just some people start with more. So when you double more to start with that you've got, you continue to have a much bigger pool.
Gotcha.
Cool. So as these things go up, if you double mitochondria, you double the amount of Krebs cycle enzymes. You double the amount of electron transport chain cytochromes. Okay. Now we will note that in a lot of people, we're not going to double the amount of oxygen that we can use at the back end. Right. But all of those components and things are going to go up. I think I've asked this question before. How many people have had biochemistry? It's like 3 of y'all. Okay. So I don't think I have it in here, but there's a thing called a Michaelis-Menten plot that you do that derives enzyme kinetics, right, on all of this. And so from a biochemical standpoint, nothing in the mitochondria that you have, the training doesn't make the enzymes in the Krebs cycle work any differently than they did beforehand. There's just twice as many of them. Okay. There's just twice as many. So imagine what we're doing is I'm taking everybody in this room and we're cloning you. So we're doubling the number of people that are in the room. So if I'm a pyruvate molecule and I have X chance of bumping into one of you guys in the room now, if I double the number of people in the room, I double my chances that I'm going to bump into one of y'all. So it drives the reaction, okay, in that particular way. It's not that any enzyme works better. There's just more enzymes. So the chances of that random interaction also are going to go up. That's how we can use a Michaelis-Menten plot to plot all of these things out. This was a thing that biochemists knew for 100 years, and it didn't occur to exercise physiologists until about 1980. That this could be a thing that explains why VO2 max goes up and works in that particular way. Okay. Let me back up and talk really quickly about PFK, and then we'll leave it there. There's a little bit of evidence, okay, on training type that you might change phosphofructokinase levels or activities in your skeletal muscle with training. if there is much of a change, it's relatively minimal, and it might be a little bit of a shift to it being slightly less active. Okay, slightly less active, which is gonna drive a little bit less pyruvate to be made. LDH enzymes are not gonna change very much. We may get a little bit of a decrease in their total amount, primarily because it changes in type 2X fibers. And as we will see later, when you train, your 2X fibers just go away. They become 2As. So that fiber type conversion is going to drive a little bit of a decrease in the LDH enzymes that are going to be there, but they're not really enough. Most of the change comes on that aerobic side. So what we're doing, we're still jamming lots of glucose into the system as always. We're just now able to, if you remember where we did that split in the pathway where you make the pyruvate and it goes to lactic acid or it goes into the Krebs cycle, we're just sort of doubling the size of the tank over here where it can go into the Krebs cycle. So a lot more of it's going to go over there. And that's how we're going to derive a lot of these metabolic changes in our pathways. Okay. Okay. We will leave it here for today. On Friday, we're hopefully, fingers crossed, we're going to have tests to get back on Friday. And then we'll pick up and talk some more about aerobic training adaptations. All right. Thanks, guys.
Don't forget to turn in the in-class assignment, please.
Oh, yeah.
Email me or bring them up.